Not sure.
Okay, we've got you.
I'm on. Okay, let's pray.
Leo has it figured out, so we've got you.
Good enough. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for this beautiful day you've let us wake up to in Georgia. And I thank you so much for the privilege and honor that it is to do your work for the people that you love and that we love. I pray that as we meet today, Lord, that our hearts and minds would be clear and that we would focus on what's important for Georgia. And I pray you would help us make the right decisions. Be with us and lead us and guide us into the best decisions, Father, and take us home safely. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. But also right now, before we call up our first presenter, I want to thank Leo Chansey, our policy analyst and person we could not operate without, and also my wonderful administrative assistant, Cameron Sanchez. Thank you for your work that you do. Of course, we can't do anything without House Media Services, so thankful for their work in getting the room set up. And also Paul Higbee, we've missed you when we've been meeting around the state, but thank you for being here with us today, Paul. All right, first on the agenda, we are going to have an update on what is going on with our forestry industry. We have Speaker Burns on the agenda first, but he will be here in just a few minutes. So Tim, we're going to start with you. And if you come on up to the, we'd love for you to come up to the podium so we can hear from you. Now, everybody knows that we've had pulp and paper mill closures in Georgia in the interim. It's had a huge impact on the forestry industry, but indirectly, many more thousands of people across the state have been impacted by this. And a lot of work has been going on since the announcements, really, to figure out how we pivot and how we make the best of a difficult situation. We had a 7-hour marathon meeting in Douglas a couple months ago, and I thought it'd be appropriate for us to get an update on the work that's been done since then, and so that the committee and other members have the most up-to-date information. So Tim, thank you for being here today and for bringing us up to speed on what's going on.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you so much for having us here to provide a sort of an update or a status update from that meeting that you held in Douglas and your committee held in Douglas. And it was something that our community needed. That event was, and that meeting was very helpful for our community, and we're certainly grateful and thankful that this group heard from our sector. And look forward to giving you an update today, and then also look forward to continuing to work with the members of the Rural Committee, Rural Development Committee, as we walk into our upcoming legislative session. I typically bring slides, but when I realized I was speaking behind or alongside Speaker Burns, I said I want to maintain maximum flexibility. So I did not put forth slides for you today, but I think I've got some interesting information to share, and I hope it will be meaningful to the work that you guys are doing, and I know it will be meaningful to our state as well. So just want to say thank you again on behalf of the Georgia Forestry Association for the opportunity to be here and to provide an update on our sector. As Chairwoman Hagan mentioned, just to kind of give you a quick reminder of the last 13 months, about September 26th, I believe, of last year was the day that Hurricane Helene came across our state, impacted 8 million acres of forest and land in our state, impacted many communities across our state. And what was unique about that storm is that it hit the forest basket of our state, really the timber belt of our state, and arguably could be called the timber belt of the world. Really, some of the most productive forest land that our country has, as well as the world has. So that hit, and then with this work, with the work of the folks that are in this in the state capitol and over in the executive branch, you guys put together a great recovery package to help those communities respond, and we were well on our way of responding. And then this summer, earlier in the late spring, early summer, Georgia Pacific made the hard decision as a business that they had to shut down their pulp operation in Cedar Springs. I see a head nodding over there, Representative Green. That's your district. That was a shot that we all felt, and it was a terrible shot. Impacted immediately jobs, and then it also impacted many of that are supportive of that mill, allied businesses that support that mill. A couple months later, we heard, and you guys are well aware of this, it was the day of the Ag Summit in Perry. Between the House and the Senate, we received news that International Paper was realigning some of their operations, and as a result of that, the Savannah paper mill, which had been around since the 1930s, one of the original paper mills in this country, they announced that they were going to be shuttering that mill, and then also they were going to shutter the mill down in Riceboro, Georgia, which is about 50 miles south of Savannah. As a result of that, those two situations, the hurricane and then what we're seeing with mill closures, it has been a challenging year for the forest product sector and for those communities that depend on forestry across our state. And what is interesting is that there are bright spots in our sector and in our community. The mills that were shut down all had a few things in common, and I think that's important for us to remember. They were linerboard and cardboard facilities, and they were old assets. They were old mills that had been around for decades, 60 years, and then upwards of some almost 100 years, as with the one in Savannah. Why are we seeing the shrinkage or the consolidation in that market space? All of us are probably asking that question because you all purchase cardboard boxes through online purchases, and they show up at your door. And it feels like that is happening more and more frequently, and it's sort of counterintuitive as to why we're seeing shrinkage in that market space and in that sector of our business. There's a couple things that are happening. The mills that are operating are the ones that are continuing to operate are operating in a much more efficient manner. The Rome, Georgia International Paper operation, had opportunity to visit it about 2 years ago. They make more product than they made a decade ago with 30% less virgin fiber than they did a decade ago. They've gotten that much more efficient in their operation and their business. And so when you start to put that across all of the operations and all of the facilities that are making that product, you begin to see how there's this need for rebalancing mills and rebalancing where the production is taking place. So that's one of the factors that we've seen, is that the efficiencies that are gained in the mills. One of the other reasons that we've seen is that there's been offshoring of that product and that production, no different than many other sectors and any other industries that our state has and that our country has. So that's another factor. And another factor that drives that is that we do a really tremendous and wonderful job of recycling those boxes. We are seeing new plants be built, but they are using recycled material. They are not using virgin fiber, which is what comes from the forest to make those products. So all of those things are kind of converging, and it's sort of that perfect storm, and that's why we're seeing the shrinkage in that part of our business. One bright spot in the pulp and paper sector is the fluff pulp. You may remember in that announcement that International Paper made, they sold 2 of their fluff pulp mills to a capital fund, one in Oglethorpe, Georgia, and then one there in Port Wentworth. That is a bright spot. The Southern Yellow Pine has a great absorbent quality and characteristic. And the world needs absorbent materials. Those are your tissues, and those are your feminine products. and those are also diapers. And that market space is increasing and growing, and people in our business are bullish on that sector. So we're pretty optimistic when it comes to looking at that sector. So I say all of that because I think I've heard recently that the pulp and paper sector is dying. And that it is a dinosaur of an industry, and it is not. I think it's just certain spots of it and certain parts of it that that are facing some challenges. But I also see there's bright spots in that space as well as we go forward. So since Douglas, the association has been very involved in trying to create awareness around those things and those issues. We've been heavily involved in media outreach and just trying to keep this issue in front of those communities and in front of our state and in front of our national leaders when we get an opportunity. There have been 8 articles that have been written. There have been numerous interviews on news channels that have been made since the mill closures. And all of that has been done to elevate the issue and to draw attention to the issue so that we can build a strong foundation as we move forward and try to bring forth solutions that can continue to support forestry in our state. One of Georgia's really premier sectors and one of our preeminent industries in our state, and we're very optimistic that we'll continue to be that way as we move forward. Legislatively, since we met in Douglas, I will let this group know that Governor Kemp brought together a task force led by the director of the Georgia Forestry Commission, Johnny Sabo. I believe we've met 5 times as a group, and some recommendations, interim recommendations have been presented to the governor for consideration. I know his office they are reviewing those, and they are considering those opportunities and those ideas that were brought forth as a result of his task force. He asked for a rapid response and a rapid set of recommendations, and proud of the work that group did to get those recommendations back to him. Some of those are short-term fixes, and some of those are intermediate and long-term fixes that we think present some great opportunities for a pathway of recovery. And I know Speaker Burns hasn't made it here yet, but Speaker Burns has been tremendously involved in one of the recommendations that our association's leadership put forth, and that was to look at export opportunities. What could we do in the near term, in the short term, to begin to find a home for some of the trees and some of the fiber that was moving to Savannah and Riceboro? What is an opportunity that we could do immediately to begin to find a home for that? And that is the near term, and the real opportunity is around exports, exporting wood chips to Europe. Europe represents about a $2 billion wood chip market. We have had challenges with that, and wood chips from the U.S. South go to Europe and go to Turkey and they go to Japan every day, or not every day, but every week or every 2 weeks here and out of the U.S. South. We frankly have had challenges with doing that out of Savannah in the past, largely because it was such a competitive market, because there was numerous markets, including those 2 that shut down, and we could not get chips on ships in a way that was economical to get them to Europe or get them to Turkey out of Savannah, because the price for the raw material standing on the stump was too costly because it was being used here domestically. That has changed. So we believe we've got a great opportunity to be able to get those chips on a ship and get those to other parts of the world that need our fiber because of its characteristics. And so super, super appreciative of Speaker Burns' work on that. He has partnered with speakers from 5 states and has written letters to the Trump administration with some very specific, very nuanced needs that need to be put in place for us to be able to begin to do that out of Savannah. We're confident that if we can get those non-tariff trade barriers removed, we can win out of Savannah. now because of the infrastructure that is there and the investment that has been made into our port system. So we're really excited about that opportunity. It will never begin to replace the 8 million tons of wood that no longer has a home, but it could represent an opportunity to do a 500,000 or 1 million tons of export of chips or logs pretty quickly. What does 8 million tons look like? I know that's a big number, but that is what that means is that last spring there were 6,000 truck trips of commerce that was taking place in our state per week at these mill locations. 6,000 truck trips that was taking place that are no longer taking place. So that's the gap that we're trying to fill, and that's the gap that Speaker Burns, I see is entering the room, is working on through that export opportunity. And we believe that creates a great promise to help keep the supply chain intact until we can find a larger consumer or a better use here domestically for our raw material. Senator Walker and Senator Goodman, legislatively speaking, we had a meeting with the consul generals from a couple countries, Finland, the Netherlands, and Germany last week. And that was all designed around talking about this export opportunity and some regulations that Europe has in place called the EUDR. Many of y'all have been educated on that here recently. And that was a very productive meeting, and we were super excited about the opportunity to share Georgia's forest with the consul generals that are based here in Atlanta and represent companies in countries in Europe. We've also been to the White House. I know some of you in this group have been to the White House as well. Recently, I've seen the photos and the pictures. We were invited to come speak to the Energy Dominance Committee about some of the proposals that we've put forth around power generation and bioenergy opportunities. We recognize there's challenges around bioenergy and making power out of wood. But our ask right now is that this presents that's history tells us that there's some challenges with it when it comes to the cost of making power from biomass, and there's also some operational challenges. However, given where we sit today, we think it presents a unique opportunity to take that idea back off the shelf and let's look at it with good intention as a state and as leaders in our state. And we think that if we do that, we have a unique opportunity to maybe rethink and reshape that thought of it not being feasible. So we continue to have those conversations, and that was one of the trips that we made to the White House, is to have that conversation. You couple that with the power needs that we have across our country, and even more specifically here in our state with the good work that this body has done to attract AI factories here. The need for that is continuing and will forever, it feels like, increase. And so we think we have a great opportunity to play in that space if we take that idea off the shelf and let's come to the conversation with a good intention to try to work that out. So we're pretty bullish and pretty excited about that. We've also talked with our utilities here in the state. They have committed to do just that, is to look at this idea in an objective and a fair way to see if it can be part of a solution for our pathway forward. Couple other things that I'll mention are economic development. Very thankful for the work that our Commissioner Pat Wilson and Sidney Smith, his right hand there, is working on for us and with us. They are actively and heavily engaged in the governor's task force. They have given us a direct line to each one of them to share ideas, to share leads, to share prospects, to just have general conversations around economic development. And so very thankful for their leadership. And I just want to acknowledge the good work that they're doing. I won't go into a lot of specifics, but we are aware that they are looking at projects for our state in the forest product sector. I'm not surprised by that because it goes back is really related to that conversation around exports. The southeast part of our state has really been off limits for growth and expansion in forest products because it has been so competitive. That landscape changed. And as a result of that, the number of eyes and the interest in Southeast Georgia, for obvious reasons, we have plenty of trees there, right? You got to have that first if you're in the forestry business. And then you got to have a favorable business climate, and you got to have great infrastructure. And Georgia ranks is way ahead of a lot of the other states on that front. So there are projects that are currently being investigated and being looked at, and I think that's important for this group to know that Georgia has eyes on it. And I think as we walk into our legislative session, we need to be mindful of that. And if there's something that we can do similar to what maybe you did to attract AI factories, the film industry, maybe a time is right to do that now that you realize that there may be an opportunity to attract some of those businesses here, and just really to let those CEOs and those investors in that space realize that Georgia is serious about maintaining its number one forestry position in across our country. I think going forward, and I'm going to wrap up with this, and I'll be happy to take any questions. I think the other thing that is important as we walk into the upcoming session is to recognize Georgia is not unique in the challenges that it is facing in the forestry space. We will be competing with other southern forestry states, and they're my friends, they're my allies, and I love them. But what I do realize, and if I want to look at what reality is, I think back to my days when I was working in the private sector with a company called Interfor. I can't reiterate, and I can't say how many times our CEO talked about the hosting conditions of Georgia. If we can get the policy right to let these leaders in our sector know that Georgia wants to continue to be a leader in forestry, I have no doubt in my mind that Georgia will win. And that's what I want to see us do. I want to see us win, and I want to see us attract those businesses here. I want to see our forestry sector grow. I'm confident that it can, and I'm confident that it will with good leadership. I had all intentions of wanting to bring some specific recommendations to the group today. However, we have a meeting of our executive committee as well as some of our tax really experts at our office on November the 17th to go over those types of ideas and recommendations that we plan and would like to have further conversation around. But broadly speaking, I think looking at how we could maybe, particularly as Georgia, just send a symbol to the community of forestry that, hey, we're serious about, we recognize you've got challenges, but we're serious about creating opportunities for your business to come here and grow. I think if you do that, I think we'll win on all the other merits that Georgia has. So, Madam Chair, I will stop there and yield the time back to you.
Thank you, Tim. I just want to thank you and your team for all the ongoing work that you've been doing for the forestry industry long before these particular issues have arisen, but especially now in your work to look at both short-term solutions and long-term solutions to keep our forestry industry strong here, and particularly in Southeast Georgia, if I do say so myself, since that's where I live. But really, it's just such an important industry in our state, and I want you to know that they're very thankful for what y'all are continuing to do there. Committee, do any of you have anything for? Okay, I'm going to try to find the right. All right, Chairman Green.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Tim, thank you for the update. And as you know, we are in Southwest Georgia from our situation there. But I want to bring something to you. We have formed a committee down in our area to push for the Port of Bainbridge to deepen it and to dredge the Chattahoochee River. Dredging on the Chattahoochee had stopped several years ago, but we believe that that will be an incentive for a lot of our forest products on that. We're also talking to the railroad people to enhance the railroad to the port at Bainbridge there. These are things that, as a community, that we see as very important that we can do to help with the situation. And we encourage y'all to help us with this particular concept. You've been very good working with us, and we appreciate that. Speaker Burns brought this up to me some time ago that we need to look at the Port of Bainbridge, and that's what we're doing on that. So we're moving forward. We're smiling and working.
Thank you, Representative Green. And yeah, the port is new to me. I'll admit that. I am familiar with the work that your group and some of the folks in that community are doing around the railroad. So I'm certainly supportive of that effort.
Okay. Representative Al Williams is online, and he just wanted to make sure I pointed out that his community in Riceboro is particularly hard hit. So we want to also make sure we continue to remember them and all the communities that have been hit so hard. And it goes beyond just the employees at the mills. It's a lot of indirect businesses that are really, really hit hard in localities. So I want to make sure we mention that for Rep. Williams. Okay, Representative Stinson.
Here.
Thank you.
I'll have plans before the end of this year to visit the plant down at Oak Street. So I just want to make you aware of that.
We'd love to help any way we can with that. If you need help facilitating that, we can work with you to help make that happen.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for making that happen. That's a great meal. They have a great meal manager there. You'll love that. You'll love that visit.
Someone else who's done an incredible amount of work in this area over the past weeks, months is Speaker John Burns. So Speaker Burns, would you prefer to speak there, or would you like to come up to the podium? Very good. Thank you. Thank you for being here with us today, Speaker Burns. Thank you, Tim.
Gone across the dam since we met in Douglas a few months ago. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to this committee for being very village on what we're working on here. But y'all know what I know. Even with the challenges, it's a great day to be a Georgian, isn't it, Patty? It is that. So we're looking forward to what this committee is going to, what y'all have uncovered, what the Executive Director of the Georgia Forestry Association just talked about, and all the things y'all been working on. Chair Lady Hagan, thank you for your dedication to your constituents, but more importantly to Georgia, as you bring us together again to strengthen our communities, no matter where they are. I see folks from all over the state on this committee, so it's important. And from both sides of the aisle, we're all of one mind here about what we can do in trying to protect our citizens and our livelihoods all across Georgia. I was speaking to some folks from the Rural Telephone Association yesterday. Hey, they get this because this impacts small businesses and the very fabric of our society across the states, because when small communities dominoes start to fall, then it really becomes a huge problem. And that's what you all recognize, and I know that's what we're all trying to solve as we work through these issues. I know we do. And we want everyone, all Georgians, to recognize that how important, not only to rural Georgia, but to all of our state, the forestry industry is, and how just devastating And those direct jobs, as you mentioned, those indirect jobs, what a blow this has been and how it's really come front and center. When Dean Grain lost the Cedar Springs mill, certainly was on the forefront of our minds, but certainly then it really cascaded when International Paper closed the Savannah mill and the Riceboro mill that's in Representative Williams's district. Those mill closures have been almost, I guess you could say, a wake-up call. I think we were a forced wake-up call to what we can do and what we should do to protect this very fabric again of our society in rural Georgia and our state. The ripple effect for me, has been profound. Someone coming who lives in the country, who understands the timber industry and the forestry industry, but more importantly, I think what it means to the individuals that I know, that you all know, that I represent, and that we all care about, our neighbors. We look at what these mill closures have done and what they will do to us as they come to complete shutdowns, and that's happening very, very closely, very, very soon. I want to thank, and you all have heard, y'all have been formulating. Gerald just talked about, Dean, you just talked about some long-term solutions to this issue. But the short term is what I'm concerned about, and that's what we've been working diligently on, along with y'all's help. And again, it doesn't only affect Georgia, but it affects the southeastern United States. And so there's similar experiences, not only that we've had in Georgia, but it's occurring from Florida to Georgia to Arkansas, in this industry. To really put a point to it, we've lost 11 mills with pulp and paper mills and with sawmills and chip mills in Georgia. Guess what? South Carolina's lost 11 mills in the last couple of years. Florida's lost 6. Alabama's lost 6. Arkansas has lost 5. I know you hear from your colleagues in forestry associations across the Southeast how impactful this has been and what it's actually the impact of it's having on our neighbors. But I try to always be an optimist, and certainly one of my favorite sayings, along with great challenges come great opportunities. So I know this committee is dwelling into all of those opportunities that we will to strengthen who we are and how we accomplish our future, because it is about Georgia's future and about the future of the southeastern United States. I want to tell you that over the last couple of months, you alluded to some of the things that you all have been a part of and participated in, and a lot of people in our state have participated in. I want to tell you some folks that we've worked closely with. That's the Alabama Speaker Ledbetter, Arkansas Speaker Evans, Florida Speaker Perez, South Carolina Speaker Smith. We've all come together and started having conversations with folks who can have influence on where we need to have some influence. That's in the White House in Washington. So some other folks that have come to our aid as well in having those conversations. The governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. And we will be having another conversation with Senator Graham tomorrow. So all of these folks are interested, and because they are being impacted in their states. Alabama Senator Katie Britt. They've all been engaged on these short-term opportunities that exist for the forestry industry. Governor Kemp is there with us, is doing what he can. Governor of Arkansas, Huckabee Sanders, and y'all remember her name, being associated with those folks in Washington. So Governor Kemp has been right there with us. Chancellor Perdue, as we all know about his service in DC and across this country, can have those conversations with folks that can be a part of the solution. Chairman Gerald Green, he's relentless, not only representing his area of the state, but representing this industry. Just had a call this morning. We'll follow up on this call from U.S. Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana, who certainly is interested in what we're doing as we reach out. So I say all of those names to say this is what we've been doing. These folks are interested in what we're doing. So if you can have a conversation with someone, you never know who's that person's going to speak to and also can have that influence. We also have a call later today with the Small Business Administrator, our own Kelly Leffler, who small businesses and their loan portfolio is impacted by these closures. So these are all people that should have an interest in what we're doing, and they do have an interest. I talked about those different states that have been impacted or being impacted. So we were looking at what we could do in the short term, and certainly formulating policy for the long term and ideas for the long term. But what can we do in the short term to keep these folks on the job and keep them working? So we came up with a couple of a small group of us met. Tim was a part of that group. They came up with some simple policies that could allow our timber producers to continue to thrive, landowners and those that produce the timber and deliver it to the mills and to the ports, because there is a rapidly shifting market for our forest products, and we want to take advantage of that. We want to take advantage of that. So let me tell you about 3 things we're focusing on. We'll give you some more details on that. First, we're asking our federal partners to do something they've been working on for a period of time, and that's engage with the European Union countries and advocate for a trial run of sulfuryl fluoride, SF. That's a fumigant. And we need to fumigate wood chips on board vessels. That would allow those chips to move into a very, very strong market in Europe. But the Europeans are using that as a non-trade, non-tariff barrier to our products moving into the European Union countries. That would allow an immediate impact. Now, it's not just about us in Georgia. That's why all these other folks are willing to join us, because South Carolina has a robust port in Charleston. They ship bulk products. We do out of Savannah. We do in Mobile, in Alabama. So Alabama's interested, certainly. And Arkansas and Florida has a robust port system that would allow them to ship. But certainly Arkansas can go out of Baton Rouge or New Orleans. So there's a common thread here that if we could get sulfuryl fluoride labeled, it is labeled. Let me say this to y'all. It is fully labeled in the U.S. It's labeled around the world. Sulfuryl fluoride is actually produced in California. So it's a product that we use. And really the difficult issue about this one, they should make it simple. The European Union countries fumigate with sulfuryl fluoride, and they'll fumigate fruits and vegetables and other products and send it here for us to consume. But they won't even allow our wood chips to go into those European countries that are fumigated with sulfuryl fluoride. So we believe that's an easy ask. And I believe we're getting some traction on that already. So we want to make sure we continue to work that point that can be a huge barrier. We can have boats leaving Savannah by mid-December or in the earliest, the first of the year, with chips on them, if we can get this issue solved. So that's as I like to say, that's an arbitrary trade barrier that European Union countries have put in place that are preventing our wood shipments. Now, know that we also ship wood pellets to the European Union countries, and we also ship lumber. Those products don't need fumigating because the process they go through in preparing them for uses, they do not have to be fumigated, but we need these green products to be fumigated. Believe again, that should be a low-hanging fruit. A second point we've come up with that could make a huge difference is we're asking for a slight clarification in the U.S. transshipment clause. And that will do that, and that's already in place, but we just need a little bit of tweaking on that. That will reassure importers. And these guys and these companies trade on narrow margins. So we want to make sure they have confidence in what we're doing and what our policy is. But they trade on narrow margins, so we want to give them that confidence so they will rev up our exports. We want to reassure them that our products have a reduced tariff if they'll do a couple of things. And they can do that if they will provide documentation that the raw products that these products coming back to us are manufactured with. So let me give you an example of that. So if furniture is manufactured in Taiwan, which happens all the time, and that furniture comes back, or those products come back to the U.S. If they are manufactured with U.S. wood products, they come from here, they can be documented from the forest to the boat until it arrives in Taiwan, and then they process that raw wood, the logs, and they send furniture or send products back here, I'll use furniture, then there will be a significant reduction in the tariff. I think I just turned on. Well, that's good. We can look at that. Thanks, Leah. That can be, there's be a significant reduction in that tariff when it comes here. Tariffs are reciprocal. If we levy a tariff, the other country honors that tariff, so it works back and forth. So if we can give proof, and our exporters assure me they don't mind providing that paper trail to ensure where that proof of origin came from, that will be a big deal, and we can rev up the usages of our products in these countries. And finally, that's two pieces. The third piece is we're requesting an establishment of a 90-day notice period for any tariffs or changes in those tariffs when they go into effect before a change is made. That would have a huge impact on the ability of our traders to trade. Again, because they trade on narrow margins, we want them to have the confidence when a shipment leaves Savannah. And 30 days later, approximately 30 to 40 days later, when it arrives in Taiwan or some Asian country, that tariff remains the same. They will actively go back and engage. They're already exporting, but not in the amounts we need. They go into those countries because they need to know what the tariff will be when the ship lands. That's when the tariff is levied, is when the boat lands and at its destination. So we need that, and all the countries, all the ports I just named need that. So we believe and hope that we can get a 90-day notice period on any reciprocal tariffs going into effect that would give exporters and importers the confidence they need. So when that ship arrives, they know what that tariff is. Let us know. Give us a notice, give those exporters notice that the tariff's going to change. They need 90-day notice. That allows the product to be produced, delivered to the ports, put on a boat, and then delivered to the country where it needs to be going to where the customer is. I want to be really clear about something though, with all of you here. This is not a criticism of our nation's trade policy. I want to be very clear about that. We know that tariffs are working to strengthen domestic production and our investment from all across the world that comes into this nation. So tariffs are working. But what we think this is, and what I know it is rather these are slight adjustment to existing language in place on the policies that we have on our exports that would provide our forestry industry an opportunity in the short term with this breathing room that we need to put people back to work and sustain us in the future. It just, we need to adjust, as I mentioned, to these changing demands and evolve into these new markets that will make a huge difference. I believe we've made pretty good progress so far. We're not to the finish line because of these conversations. I want to thank Tim Larimore for his work and what he's done with his partnership with Georgia Forestry Association and with Director Sabo with the Georgia Forest Commission and all of the members of the House have had these conversations that I'm having right now with you all. I know y'all have had those conversations and many, many people have, and we're all dedicated to these issues. And I want to thank our federal leaders, our congressional leaders who care about securing a brighter future for our state and for this industry so we can sustain ourselves. I know, I not only believe, but I know that we're headed in the right direction. And I do believe, because I'm an optimist, that our brightest days are ahead of us in this industry because of all the opportunities we're going to explore and we're going to develop. We just need this short-term help to keep this industry viable in the short term, because I've been around the forestry industry again for a long time, and it's faced adversity over the years. When that's come about, and then many times but I think that I know that the forestry industry can emerge even stronger in the future than it is now if we'll all just work together with a little common sense. That's what I have, Madam Chair. Thank you for letting me be here, and thank you for allowing me this conversation. Look forward to working with y'all and providing any information that you may need.
Thank
If you
you.
have a question, I'll be glad to
Thank you,
take one.
Mr. Speaker. These are such practical solutions that, and short term, which is, I know that was your whole priority intent in getting that done. So thank you for bringing that to us to talk to us about today. Does anyone have a question or comment for the speaker? I don't see any speaker burns. Thank you
I
again.
tried to talk
Put
long
us
before you
up
want to
to
ask me a
date.
question. Thank you. I did. Thank y'all.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
y'all for the work you're doing. Appreciate it.
All right. Mr. Speaker, I'm an optimist too, and I do feel like with some of the incredible leadership we've got working on this situation that our forestry industry eventually is going to come out stronger than it was before. But I look forward to us continuing to talk about this amongst ourselves and with people, stakeholders in the industry and our constituents to keep looking for some solutions. Thank Tim and Speaker for coming up and bringing those updates to us. Really appreciate y'all. Okay, now we're going to move to the next item on our agenda, and that is the Georgia Municipal Association. And I'll give y'all a few minutes to get up here. They've brought a huge team of people that are going to give us some valuable information. If I would remind the committee members that were at our meeting in Macon last month, that we heard from our state auditor, and he presented to us about how many of the municipalities we have that are not completing their audits in a timely manner. And that led to many conversations since then with members and others about why this is, and I'll leave that at that. But I asked Leona Rittenhouse, the GMA, if she would put together a presentation for us so that we as legislators could be informed about what is required, expected of our municipalities, what is available to them as far as training and education, so that they know what is expected of them and how to accomplish that, and what just resources in general that are available to them. So she has put together a wonderful group that's going to educate us. And I think members, you may have questions. And if you do, I think what we'll do is let's just hear your questions as they come up. So if you either hit your button or get my attention, and if you have a question for the presenters, we'll go ahead and ask that so that you can refer to the slides and get the information you need. So with that, Leona, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Leona Rittenhouse. I'm one of the lobbyists at GMA. With me today, I have our General Counsel, Rushi Patel, our Deputy Director of Training, Aileen Harris, and our Director of Member Services, Pam Helton. You're going to be hearing from all of them in just a little bit. I'm here to kick it off and tell you a little bit about what GMA does. So what does GMA do? What you're most familiar with is our advocacy efforts, but we do so much more besides advocacy. On our advocacy efforts, we are the only state organization that represents all of Georgia's 536 cities. We represent all of these cities at both the state and federal level. We have 6 standing policy committees that guide our work, along with a legislative policy council, as well as a federal policy council. And this guides the work of our government relations team throughout the year. In terms of training and education, we offer over 75 training courses to our cities and to our city officials. This is done through our Harold F. Holtz Municipal Training Institute and through our partnership with the Carl Vinson Institute of Government at UGA. In terms of member services, this is, I like to call kind of our boots on the ground. We have member services consultants, and they live in all 12 of our GMA districts. They are there to assist our cities with whatever they need. They also teach training courses, facilitate retreats, as well as help cities with their general needs as they arise. So these are really our boots on the ground, as I like to call them. For our risk management and insurance, we offer insurance to local governments. This includes life, health, and vision. We also offer, on the risk management side, we offer workers' compensation, as well as firefighters' cancer benefits and first responder PTSD benefits. And with that, I'm going to turn your attention to 2 publications that GMA does. You should have this as a handout. This is the Value of Georgia Cities. This is a publication that GMA produces annually. This is through publicly available data. This is through the Census Bureau for the population data. And then, oh, I think I did something to the presentation. It turned a little bit blue. this is publicly available data through the Census Bureau, and then the financial data is also available. It's publicly available. This is through Department of Community Affairs, and this is through their report of local government finance. So this is where our data comes from. GMA takes this data, and we use this to illustrate the economic impact that cities have on the state as a whole. So some of the stats that I wanted to draw your attention to very quickly. Even though cities comprise only 9% of the land area in Georgia, they contain actually 45% of the population within the state. And 73% of our cities, which I thought the committee would find interesting, 73% of the cities in Georgia have a population of 5,000 or less. And this includes a lot of our rural cities. So this is a very important component of GMA cities. And then even though our cities are home to about 48% of the housing structures within the state, they actually provide 70% of the jobs within Georgia. And then our cities actually see a population swell during the day. This is about 24%, and this includes daytime population of workers coming in and coming in for commuting purposes. So this actually leads into the next handout, because while we have a daytime increase in population, cities do have to provide services for both daytime and nighttime population. So that leads me into our capital needs survey. So this is also a handout that everyone has. This capital needs survey is conducted by GMA. This is done every 5 years. This was actually completed just last year. And this survey is sent to all of our cities. They have about 2 months to respond. And this is where we gather our data. We take this response data and we then make population and projections on infrastructure needs by category over the next 5 years. So these projections that you're seeing are for the years 2025 through 2029. This totals about $33 billion in projected infrastructure needs that cities are projected to need over the next 5 years. The top 2 categories that I wanted to draw to your attention, water and sewer, that was named as the top infrastructure need in 10 out of our 12 GMA districts, as you can see on the map here on the slide. So in all of our districts, except for Metro Atlanta and District 11 in South Georgia, water and sewer was identified as the top need in 10 out of those 12 districts. And this totals about $10.2 billion in infrastructure needs over the next 5 years. In Metro Atlanta in District 3 and in South Georgia in District 11, transportation and roads was identified as the top need in both of those districts. And this totals about $9.7 billion for total infrastructure for road needs over the next 5 years. Other top infrastructure needs that were identified through this survey are public safety, parks and recreation, stormwater, downtown development, and solid waste. So, Madam Chair, if there are no questions for me, I'm going to turn over to Rushi Patel, our General Counsel. He's going to talk to you about what constitutes a city, city charters, and everything that makes up a city.
You do have one question.
Okay.
And thank you for those handouts. Those are great. Representative Stinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you tell me, I would like to know about the survey. You don't have to
Yes.
answer now. We can maybe offline, but I'd like to know that the cities in my district respond back to that survey.
Yes, and we can certainly discuss that offline for specific cities.
Okay.
Okay, with that, I will turn over to Rushi Patel.
Thanks, Leona, and good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. I always have trouble with clickers, so there we go. My name is Rushi Patel. I'm the General Counsel with the Georgia Municipal Association. What I'm going to talk to you about is how cities are created and what cities charters mean, and a little bit about what services cities are supposed to provide and things like that. The slides I'm going to go through are actually a little bit of a part of a training class I teach called Municipal Law. It's a 6-hour training class, so this is a big chunk of that class. I'm not going to bore you for 6 hours. I think you might kick me out of the room. So, but I am going to talk a little bit about how cities are created and what's in those charters, and a little bit about what some issues we might see with cities. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is what we see in typical charter provisions. First things first is you might see in city charters the incorporation in powers. So the names and the boundaries of the city, that's pretty important. That's usually the first part we see in a city charter. The terms and qualifications for office, what happens when there's vacancies in office, and vacancies in office can happen for a lot of reasons, same as the offices you're holding. Compensation and expenses of those elected officials, ethics, investigations and inquiries into that. Now, not all city charters have provisions about ethics. So we actually have a program at GMA called the Cities of Ethics program, where we actually have put together a model ethics ordinance that cities can adopt, and a lot of cities have adopted this, where they have a process through that ethics ordinance that their elected officials and members of their boards and whatnot are supposed to comply with those ethics provisions. And then general power and authorities. One thing I'm going to talk about here is, you see here is an image of the city of Milton. For a long time in the state of Georgia, we did not have new cities. And then in 2005, the state law was changed through the legislature to allow for new cities to be created. The first of those new cities was the city of Sandy Springs. We've had a large number of those new cities created in the metro Atlanta area. In order to be a new city, you have to have 200 people. You have to have 200 people per square mile, and you have to meet certain density requirements with residential, commercial, and industrial land use. Now, none of these new cities have only 200 people. All the new cities that have been created since 2005 have a pretty significant amount of population. But existing cities can be much smaller than 200. Our smallest city is the city of Edge Hill, which at the last census, I think, had 24 people. And I think we all know what our biggest city is. We're in it right now. So what are some other typical charter provisions? Well, we have provisions that deal with organization and procedures. So when the meetings, the regular meetings of the city council are, we have provisions that deal with the rules of order and procedure, how they interact with each other as city elected officials, and the mechanics of adopting an ordinance. Believe it or not, the way that ordinances are adopted can vary from city to city, with the exception of certain things mandated by the state, like zoning procedures and budget procedures. But for the most part, ordinance procedures are set forth in the city charter. So you may have a charter that says you can adopt an ordinance the second you have it before the city council, whereas another city might have a provision in their charter that says you have to have a couple of hearings before you can adopt it. But that's up to the provisions in the city charter. Administrative affairs, so you talk about administrative officers, city clerks, city managers, city administrators, sometimes city attorneys. Although I will say, and Leona talked about this a second ago, that over 70% of our cities are small cities, under 5,000 people. So most of those cities cannot afford to have an attorney in-house. So they hire external attorneys. And so there are provisions in the charter that talk about the attorney, but those attorneys are typically in private practice. They might do all sorts of law. They might do family law, they might do criminal law, and they also happen to handle city business. And so that's where my team can come in a little bit handy with those city attorneys, because those city attorneys are expected to understand a lot of different areas of the law, and we can often be a resource to them, where they can call us and say, hey, I'm trying to deal with this municipal issue. Can you help me navigate through the legal issues on that? Because that's not my bailiwick, you know. The charter can also have provisions about the judicial branch. The judicial branch with the city is obviously the municipal court. We have about 400 cities in the state of Georgia, about 536 that have a municipal court. Elections and removal. Yesterday was a very big day for cities in Georgia. So cities in Georgia have, for the most part, odd year elections. There are a few cities that are on an even year cycle, but most cities are on odd year elections. So a lot of the elections yesterday impacted our cities. We're still obviously looking at those results through the state, but from our initial look, we are going to have about 75 new mayors in the state of Georgia. And we're going to talk, Aileen in particular is going to talk about training and how we train these new folks. So finance, the charters talk about taxation and fees. Cities cannot create their own taxes. And that's a good thing, that they can't just create their own taxes. They're bound by whatever taxes you all as a legislature give them the authority to put in place. So property taxes, you all have allowed cities to have property taxes. Sales taxes, you have allowed cities to have certain sales taxes, but only up to a certain level, and that sort of thing. Excise taxes are another thing. Borrowing. Georgia is one of two states, and this is also a good thing. Georgia is one of two states where cities are limited in how much debt they can incur. We cannot declare bankruptcy as cities in the state of Georgia. Only one other state has cities with that restriction, and that's Iowa. And I think that's a good thing. It means we have to be or try to be fiscally responsible as cities. And Chairwoman, you were talking about the audit issue. That's obviously a problem for us as well, because we don't like that when they're not following the accounting and budgeting process that they're supposed to be following. We try to train them. Procurement, how they acquire goods, services, and things like that for their city. You may have looked at a charter or two, and some of you all have been around for a long time at the legislature, so you've looked at a lot of charters. Charters are more of like a spectrum. When I teach this training classes, people tend to think of charters in these three categories as council manager, strong mayor, and weak mayor. But there's more of a spectrum than that, because charters tend to pick and choose from different provisions. But I can go through a little bit of what these basic structures are. A council manager form of government is basically when the elected officials hire a city manager, and that city manager is the one who runs the day-to-day operations of the city. So it's a professional running the day-to-day operations. A strong mayor form of government is where, again, the elected officials are elected, but the mayor might have more powers. They might not have a manager, they might have an administrator, they might not have anything at all. The mayor is typically the ones where the department heads are reporting to. The mayor might have veto powers and voting powers in that situation, but that's not always the case. The weak mayor form of government, you may have an administrator as well, but you may also have a situation where the different council members oversee different areas of the government. So the police chief might report to a council member, the public works director might report to a council member. The mayor typically does not have a vote in this situation, typically does not have veto powers in that situation. But that's also not always the case. And I will, before I go into or turn it over to Aileen, one thing I will talk about is we do try to train our members significantly on how the charters can be amended. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that right now, because I want to talk about charter amendment procedures and inactive municipalities, because I think that does matter to this committee. First, charters can be amended three different ways. One is by y'all at the legislature. Y'all can do anything you want with charters. You can even pull a charter if you wanted to. Now, we would hope you would talk to us about that if we have issues with the city, see if we can fix it. But you can pull a charter, you can amend a charter, whichever way you want. The other method that is kind of not used very often is a petition and referendum method. You may have seen stories about this with Camden County and more recently with Sapelo Island, where there have been news stories about a petition being pushed by members of those communities to have some action of their local government. Both of those situations were county level, but it's the same concept, where actions by the county were challenged basically by the members of the community. In Camden County, it was the spaceport. In Sapelo Island, it was the zoning, and that one's actually ongoing still. And so we have a similar provision for cities, and it allows for the amendment of the charter by a petition and referendum method. Obviously, that one's not used very much because it's expensive and time consuming, right? The third method is the home rule method of amending a city charter. So cities themselves, the city governing authority, can amend their city charter through a process set forth in state law. It requires a certain number of public hearings and notices to the legal organ and that sort of thing. But there are limitations to this. The city cannot amend its own charter by changing its form of government. Can't do that. That has to come through the legislature. Can't create a new tax, because that's, again, the purview of the legislature. Can't change the jurisdiction of the court. I would really hope a city would never try to do that. And there's certain other ones that the city cannot do by itself. They have to rely on you all as a legislature to do. Then let's finally talk about inactive municipalities before we talk about training. There is a code section, it's OCGA 36-30-7.1. I'll say it again, it's 36-30-7.1. In order to stay an active municipality, cities have to provide either directly or through contract at least 3 services. And there's a list of those services in that statute, but it includes things like police, fire, roads, water, sewer, stormwater, codes. zoning, recreation, and there might be one or two others. So they have to provide at least 3 of those services, either directly or by contract. Then they also have to have at least 6 regularly scheduled meetings of their council or commission through the year. Now, most cities have at least 12, but the minimum is 6. The floor is 6. Most cities meet at least once a month. A lot of cities meet more than once a month. And then finally, they have to have regular elections, which we saw yesterday. So that's the inactive municipality statute. If they do not meet those standards, they can be challenged in court, and then their charter can be pulled through the process set forth in state law. That law was put together in the early mid-90s, and in the early mid-90s, we had a bunch of cities that existed on name only just get pulled. There were probably 200 of those that just never did anything. They only existed by name, and they were no longer existing. So you may see those when you drive on roads throughout the Georgia of like historic township of blah, blah, blah. At some point, they were officially a city, and then they weren't actually doing anything. Their charter got pulled. But with that, I'll turn it over to Aileen to talk about training, unless I have questions.
We do have a few questions for
Sure.
you. We'll start with Chairman Hatchett. This is about training, so he'll wait.
Sure.
Chairman Corbett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a meeting with our city manager earlier this week on Monday, and he, at the end of the meeting, he said, "When are you gonna do something about them training that these boards, appointed volunteers to boards, they have to take every year?" And is that something that's required by law, or is that rules and regs with GMA, where they have to, these volunteer boards they appoint people to, they have to take time off of work to?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And Aileen may have a further answer to this. It depends on the board as to what training. So the city elected officials and those folks, those are the folks that we are particularly focused on training, and the city managers and the city clerks. Cities can create all sorts of boards. There are some boards that have structures set out by state law, and they might have their own training requirements, like development authorities. And so we do work with those folks on training, but cities can create all sorts of boards. When I worked for the city of Brunswick, we had a board that was the Gullah Geechee board. That's not something ever set out in state law. And I literally was the one that manned that board and taught them how boards are supposed to operate, because there are certain things that boards are supposed to do, whether they're officially ones that are created through state law or locally, that they have to do. Boards that are officially created by city government have to follow open meetings law, for instance. And so they may or may not know that, but we try to provide that information to the cities and to those boards the best we can. We just don't know all the boards that are created. Sure.
One more question, Representative Stinson.
Just about ethics.
Yes. Yeah, so ethics is obviously, we have 536 members, and sometimes we have members that have ethical challenges. And hopefully that doesn't lead to criminal challenges, but we do know that that does happen too sometimes. But ethics, we have a cities of ethics program where we have developed a model ethics ordinance that sets forth a process and rules that cities, we would hope that cities which adopt it would follow. And so it sets a process that says, okay, y'all as cities of ethics, these are the standards you as elected officials or members of your boards are supposed to abide by to conduct an ethical business, right? And it allows for people to file challenges against them, whether they're fellow elected officials or members of the community, to have a process for filing an ethics challenge against them to say, you have committed an ethics violation, and here's the potential consequences to an ethics violation. And then it has penalties in that statute. Yep. Does that help?
Representative Stinson, would you mind asking your question again in the mic? We heard his answer, but we didn't hear what question you asked him. Thank you.
Of course, I was just asking about, he had mentioned ethics, and I just want to know more about the ethics process, because I do know that's a concern in one of my cities. Some complaints were filed, and constituents was asking me about the process, because they never heard about any results or any action that were taken from those ethics complaints. And that's what I just want you to elaborate more about the ethics process within city government.
Sure. And I'll elaborate a little bit further on that. Is our model ethics ordinance, that those cities that have adopted it, it should have results at the end. We're not a regulatory body. We're just a nonprofit corporation. And we get that question a lot is, what can you do as GMA to make them follow this and make them do that? And unfortunately, nothing, because we're not regulatory. And maybe that's fortunate, to be honest. But we do try to train them and make sure that they follow that process. Sure.
Representative Ford has a question.
Thank you. I have had, one of my small towns has had a lot of negative press. I'm in Berrien County. And I've had several people call and ask me to pull the charter. How is the best way to go about that? Should I get should we do the referendum? Should I get more community support? I mean, I hate to go in there and just do this. What do you recommend and what's been done in the past?
I mean, that's a great question. So the petition referendum method is probably the most challenging one to do. You as a legislator could just pull the charter on your own with the fellow members of your delegation if you wanted to. Now, before you get to that, though, one thing I would note is that I probably have a more colorful term for this, but I've been at GMA for 15 years. I worked for a local government city before that. And, we 536 members, we have cities that kind of go sideways from time to time, right? And those cities that go sideways, it's often just tied to the people who are elected in office. And if you can get those folks that are going sideways out of office, that city can get fixed. And the purpose of cities is not to give people a position of an elected official. The purpose of the city is to provide services that are necessary to that community. So if you're going to pull a charter, the first thing I would ask a legislator is, does that community not need those services anymore? Or can they get them elsewhere? Because if they can't and they don't, then, or if they can't and they do need those services, then you're going to create a bigger problem for that community, and they may or may not even recognize that. So we would hope that you can work with us and we can work with other people. Usually it's not all the members of the governing authority that are going wacky. Usually you can work with us and them. We can find a solution. It can be painful. And I know some of you have dealt with that pain before. But we try to work and hopefully we can find a resolution. That doesn't mean there always is a resolution, but we would hope that we would take those steps first before pulling a charter.
Thank you.
Sure.
Members, I would remind y'all that we are going to have an opportunity later on today to talk with our guests from GMA here about specific situations if y'all need to do that. So let's try to keep these questions here more general in nature for our education. And then if we've got specific issues we need to talk about, we'll be able to do that later. I've got one more question from Chairman. Which one have we got? Chairman Brightman. I think I have your mic on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know you mentioned fees briefly, as you talked about taxes. Can you talk a little bit about what, some of your cities use the fee structure for?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different types of fees, and I know I'm going to forget some, but for the fees, there can be fees for right-of-way usage. Certain companies might want to put fiber or other facilities in the right-of-way because it's certainly a lot cheaper to utilize the right-of-way than to access private property to run fiber or whatever. And so there are fees set forth in state law and state regulation for that. And that's supposed to be utilized for certain things related to management of the right-of-way. There might be fees for regulatory fees related to businesses. Certain businesses can have regulatory fees placed on them because there might be some specific instance where that business has to be regulated in a certain way, and that fee is supposed to be used for that regulation. So fees are supposed to be tied to the purpose of that fee. So like if you collect a fee on X issue, that fee revenue is supposed to be used for fixing whatever that issue is, which is different than tax. A tax, as you know, Chairman, is meant to be for general revenue. And so there is that difference. I'm not going to be able to name all the fees off the top of my head. That's a Ryan issue at that point. So,
Well, I was thinking garden varieties, but you answered, I think, the question I was, hoping the members would hear. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure.
That seems to be the last of the questions for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm here to talk about the Harold F. Holtz Municipal Training Institute. And like Leona said, that it is operated through a partnership between the Georgia Municipal Association and the University of Georgia's Carl Vinson Institute of Government. And it's a partnership that works well because both organizations are committed to public service and local government excellence. The partnership dates back to probably the 1960s, but it was formally established in state law through OCGA 36451, the Municipal Training Act. And essentially that law recognizes the importance of training for newly elected city officials to ensure effective governance. The purpose of the Georgia General Assembly declared that it was in the best interest of the citizens of this state to require newly elected officials to attend a course of training and education. And the goal is to equip city officials with the knowledge of their powers, duties, and responsibilities. So to fulfill that requirement, GMA and CVLG jointly produced the state mandated newly elected officials institute. It's held once in odd years and twice in even years. And topics include the municipal law, ethics, finance and budgeting, public safety, land use, I messed up. Otherwise, it's good. I'm going back the other way. Oh, this one, sorry. Okay. So again, municipal law, ethics, finance and budgeting, public safety, land use, and personnel management, among other topics. Also, there's OCG 36455, which creates a committee to oversee the training program. We call that the Municipal Training Board. It is comprised of 17 members appointed by CVLG Director in consultation with GMA. There's 12 district representatives, 1 per each GMA district, 3 at-large posts, with 1 being a city manager, the CVLG Director or his or her designee, and the DCA Commissioner or his or her designee. And they review agendas and evaluations, develop new classes, and promote training to their peers. So beyond training, as Rushi and Leona mentioned, we offer beyond the newly elected officials institute, we offer a voluntary 75 class continuing education program. You may have this brochure, which our classes are listed in, and it's open to elected municipal officials, city managers, and other key municipal staff like city attorneys. The classes are offered in January and June at our conferences, and also standalone events that rotate around the state. For instance, this year we had classes in Dublin, in LaGrange, and in Duluth. The training is offered in multiple formats and regional classes, live online sessions, and live on demand sessions. The pricing is usually $90 to $315, at least that's what it was in 2015, with multi-day classes costing a little bit more. We do offer small city scholarships in the form of registration fee reduction for cities with a population of 1,500 or less. We also offer lower fees for virtual and regional sessions. Our curriculum spans a number of topics, including city operations and management, community and economic development, community engagement, intergovernmental relations, leadership development, quality of life, and revenue and finance. Also, officials can earn recognition by participating in our training program. We offer 5 levels of certificates, and we award these certificates during our conferences. So in 2025, we had approximately 4,200 training registrations from 1,350 officials from 335 cities. You can tell where those officials came from. We also recognized 56 mayors who completed our inaugural Mayor's Leadership Academy, and we recognized 9 officials for joining our inaugural 400 Club, and these officials earned 400 or more hours of training. And I love this testimonial from the mayor of Pembroke. And she talks about how with the limited staff, they weren't able to make educated decisions, but they used the knowledge they gained in our training program to do so. And that they have had a great return on investment in terms of grants and technical resources that have far exceeded their budget. And we think training matters because it builds excellence in service delivery and local governments, leads to enhanced community and economic development outcomes. But we're not stopping there. The Municipal Training Board, GMA, and CVRG are committed to working together to reach more cities, enhance our newly elected program, and develop more classes. So, no more questions. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Pam.
You do have one question.
Yes.
Thank
Chairman
you.
Hodgett,
Thank you. Mo.
Hero.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you for that information. And I'm a product of much training with GMA, spent 10 years. Mentioned earlier that there are, I think, 75 new mayors that were elected yesterday. What are the required trained? Is there training that is required? And if they don't take the training, are there penalties?
So the only training that's required by state law is the newly elected officials institute, which we'll offer in February and March this year, February in Athens and March in Tifton. That law does not have penalties. We like to remind them that they were sworn to uphold the laws of Georgia. And so not attending is not upholding that, and also public shaming.
So they can not attend and still hold office.
That is correct.
So there are issues, I think, across the state, obviously, because we have so many cities that do not have audits done and don't have audits complete, which therefore they can't receive any grants or assistance from, I believe, the federal or state government. So I'm curious as to your opinions on putting possibly some teeth in some of this. So there's obviously a lack of training not being done or offered, but being completed.
And I think that's where member services come in. I think. So I'm Pam Helton, and I've been with GMA now for 21 years, and I've been in local government all my life. So I was previously with Sandersville, so I understand their challenges and what happens in local government. So by taking member services a step further in trying to help our cities, it can be rewarding and it can be difficult at the same time. And I do want to address the question about the training for committees and boards. We often will ask cities if they would like our help to do that. But just this year, I'm going to have a class for the city clerks to train them on their responsibilities, maybe in trying to incorporate training for their boards, their committees, or anything that's appointed, so that they have the resources and the training that they need to understand their responsibilities. So we will be offering a class at Cities United for the clerks on that topic. So as we talk about member services, we do have a team of 7 consultants that are assigned at least one GMA district, most 2, and they live in the districts in which they serve. Our passion is to help cities. That is what we're for. We've all been in local government before, and we want to make sure that they succeed in what they're doing. We try our best. Sometimes it's difficult, but we want to be that resource for them. We want to be the person they contact when they need something. Then we can find them the answers they need or connect them with other agencies or whatever they may need. So that's the purpose of the member services consultants. We also have the managing directors of the Gwinnett Municipal Association and the DeKalb Municipal Association on our team, as well as the director of community and workplace culture. So what do we do? Besides being in the field and site visits and just checking on our cities, we do offer a lot of technical and educational services for our members. We have workshops, webinars, training on a variety of topics. We offer 3 certificate programs, municipal revenue, human resources, and customer service. And while these are geared toward staff, we welcome elected officials to attend, and we often have elected officials attend because these are great resources for them to take advantage of. And we hold them regionally throughout the state twice a year, and they're very economical for them to take. Could you get them all right there? Thank you. So we try to go to the cities and help them to get what they need in training at another level than the Carl Vinson. We also help with supervisory leadership programs and employee development programs. We have a transformational leadership certificate program and a municipal leader community and workplace culture certificate program also. The supervisory leadership programs, I have worked with several cities in developing classes that actually help their city with their professional development of their employees. Hinesville, Cartersville Commerce, and Thomasville, just to name a few. We offer retreat facilitation. This can be for mayor and councils for their strategic planning sessions. It could be for their councils or department heads for budget retreats. We've worked with DDA boards or Main Street boards to help them with their strategic planning. And it's a way to help the cities plan for the future and have a vision and commitment to goals and objectives to reach some of those goals that they need. And they have a plan in place to do that when we leave. Operational reviews. We can go into a city and help identify on a high level some of the issues that they may have not seen that they need to work on. And we provide them with some information and resources to help them reach some of the areas of concern that they have had in some of their departments. We can help with some financial planning. We have often helped develop some budgets with cities, help with their capital improvements plans, help setting the millage rate, just to have them, just be a resource for them to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it. When there's a new city clerk or a new city manager in a city, we go in and do an orientation with them just to make sure that they understand what GMA is and about government and about, what do they need from us to help them in that new position. Make sure they know where to go for help. Make sure they know about all the resources and the other agencies that can provide some opportunities for their city. And we do help with about those required reporting requirements that we know that they have to do. So we are constantly sending out reminders or calling and trying to see, how we can help them to be in compliance with all of the reporting requirements that they have to do. We also have a small cities conference that we have once a year, and it is really designed for small cities. The registration fee is very low. We have state and federal agencies come in so that they can be aware of all the programs that's offered through other state and federal agencies and just some funding resources as well. We developed the Broadband Summit with GTA to help once a year have a summit and have information on funding opportunities, technology solutions, any new and upcoming innovative ideas, and just to make sure that they understand how the need for broadband and partnership makes sense for the state of Georgia. So we work with our Workforce Development Advisory Committee and our Member Services Advisory Council because those are councils that are created by GMA, and then we can help in those areas to try to solve some of the issues that they face. We have new mayor regional meetings, and after today, we will be already planning those meetings with the new mayors. We'll have seasoned mayors to come in with our group to meet with them so that they can be a mentor to those new mayors. So we'll go ahead and give them a little preview of what's, to be expected. what resources are out there, and try to go ahead and answer some of their questions before they get into office. Now, we don't do that with all new elected officials, but we do it with the new mayors. So the team of member services team, we've all got qualities and experience in a lot of different areas, but we've all been in local government. So we all understand what it's like to work in a city. And so it makes us, I think it makes us good at our jobs because we get it, we understand. But we can help each other out in different areas because we've all got different expertise in a lot of different areas with city government. So let's go ahead and talk about that audit and compliance issues.
If I could interrupt you just for 1 second. We're running up on time.
Okay.
So I'm thinking if we just hit this really fast, and since we're going to have the opportunity to talk to y'all more,
And you have a
in a
presentation,
few
right?
minutes later,
Yes.
I think we'll do that so that we can keep going.
Okay.
So, and members, instead of asking any questions, we'll just wait and do that over lunch. But yeah, finish this up and then we'll.
I mean, and you have our presentation, so if you want me just to hit the audit and compliance issues real quick.
I think we do need to hear about the
Yes.
audits and compliance issues, and then we'll continue talking over lunch. Thank you.
So we understand that there are cities that are non-compliant with their audits, and we have diligently been trying to assist them in any way that we can. Some of the areas that we have found that are the obstacles for them is the turnover of key staff. When somebody leaves a city, especially in the finance area, and that's one person that's leaving and they are do everything, it takes a while before they can get somebody on board, and by then they're way behind. And so when the new person comes on, they may be unaware of some of the responsibilities at that position. And then that puts them that much more behind. And once you fall behind in work with finance, it takes time to catch back up. Often sometimes we find that cities hire really unqualified staff. They don't have the experience or they don't know about governmental accounting like we would like for them to have. But we do provide training on that. But it's hard. It really is difficult in a city situation when it's a small town and you are the only person doing everything. It really is hard to have the time to catch up on everything that was left undone. And most often, not only was it left undone, but it was in a mess. So some cities also report that they have a difficult time finding auditors to do the work. And if they find somebody, it's too expensive for them and they can't afford it. Some cities have had to change auditors in midstream because they can't get their auditors to finish what they started. So that puts them that much more behind. We've had cities to issue RFPs and zero bidders. So there are a lot of different reasons why cities are non-compliant with their audit. So I hope we'll all think about all the reasons and let's try to help with solutions. We've just recently made calls on the whole list, and the ones we have talked to, most of them have said, hey, I'm working on it. We've got it lined up. The auditors are doing good. We've even had a couple of cities say, well, we've got those done. Well, they hadn't submitted them to the Department of Audit yet. So we're working hard to try to get them in compliance. We really are. And we work with them any way we can.
Thank you for that.
Okay. So I can let you you've got the slide deck if you.
Yeah, let's do that. I do have one quick
Okay.
question from one member. She says it'll be very quick, and then we'll do that. Representative Osteen, let me see if
I'm loud anyway. Thank you so much, Chair. I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. GMA is an option for cities to participate in,
Well, they're all members.
but the training,
They have to.
compliance, you have to be asked to come in, correct? And so to me, the way that the system seems like it is set up is that if we had law enforcement and we've got all these people running up and down the road and the officer pulls somebody over and makes a suggestion, would you please slow down? And no authority to do anything else. It's like we have a governing authority, but nobody's really holding their feet to the fire because we don't have any laws in place to hold their feet to the fire, other than they can just not get the state funding. Some of them just opt out of it anyway. Does that make, am I
It
understanding?
does, it does, but I think the taxpayers, their citizens should hold them accountable, really.
But
Is
they don't know.
I guess, I understand.
They don't know
Understand.
what's going on.
I understand, yeah.
All right, thank you. I think what's abundantly clear to all of us is that there is an abundance of resources that y'all provide for our municipalities so that they can get the training and education and help that they need, both mandated and optional, for them so that they can provide excellent service to their constituents and to our constituents as well. Thank y'all so much for being here. We are a few minutes behind schedule, but we are going to take a 5-minute break and then we're going to hear from Matt Seal. So we will be in recess for 5 minutes. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get back where we need to be so that we can continue. All right, everyone. At this time, I will recognize Matt Seal, who's the CEO of the Douglas Coffee County Chamber of Commerce, and potentially other things that he is working on, because he's a very busy person and a friend to many of us on this committee. And so thank you for being here today, and we look forward to your presentation.
Much for having me. So I'm contractually obligated to say that I'm the CEO of the Douglas Coffee County Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Authority. And in my capacity as the chairman of the fairly newly formed, thanks partly to this committee, the South Georgia Energy Authority. Going to be speaking to you today about some of the things going on there. And really today is about some thank yous to you and update as far as activity that's happened since the last time I was able to present before the then council, now full committee. Appreciate you guys too. I want to thank you for letting us host you in Douglas. I was actually supposed to speak at that meeting, but then the meeting got changed to a very important issue, of course, of the timber industry. And I think it was a longer meeting with a lot more information than what was originally intended. So I appreciate you letting me come up and speak on this at this meeting on this very important issue to us in South Georgia. So again, I'm with the South Georgia Energy Authority. And just going to go through a few slides real quick. I'm sure everyone's very familiar. We've talked about natural gas very much in the context of the timber industry. That was actually a hot topic of conversation at the Douglas meeting. But just to kind of go through some basic things, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. There's just a breakdown. I'm not going to read the slide to you, but obviously a lot of residential consumers of natural gas throughout the state of Georgia. The commercial are fewer in number, industrial is even fewer in number, but a lot bigger burners of that natural gas, which creates a lot more economic activity and prosperity for folks. There's 3 main pipelines in the state of Georgia for natural gas distribution. There are 2 investor-owned utilities throughout the state that have a presence in the state of Georgia. And I guess most important to me and our little band of rebels down in South Georgia, there are 80 municipal systems throughout the state of Georgia that provide natural gas to the end consumers. And some of those cities, of course, are the city of Douglas, which I'm a part of, cities of Fitzgerald, Tifton, Osceola, and Ashburn. And those are the cities that make up the South Georgia Energy Authority that was formed through a legislative process earlier this year. It probably goes without saying, but natural gas increasingly is important to us as far as economic development. In some places, it's all about heat in the home, but very much in our part of the state, it's about we can bring jobs, we can bring wealth and prosperity to the people of rural Georgia if we have the proper infrastructure, and natural gas has been an increasingly important piece of that infrastructure. It's absolutely critical, especially for the timber industry. And we talked about that again in Douglas. It's already been referenced again today. We have opportunities to help people expand, but right now we have a limitation in our part of the state because of the capacity to get natural gas to those end consumers and to those industries that want to grow because they're already there, and folks that we'd like to locate. They're not currently there, they'd like to be, and this sometimes is the limiting factor. So again, I can't stress enough the importance of tackling this issue to create jobs and bring new investment to our part of the state. It's essential in timber industry, also very essential in food processing and food products, which we have a lot of in our part of the state. Of course, paper, bricks, glass, and plastics, all those things need natural gas, need the heat as part of their process at the industrial level. This is just a quick, and this is not the entire map of all the infrastructure in Georgia, but this is the part that's most relevant to us. There's a pipeline that pretty much comes from Alabama, cuts through southwest Georgia, and goes into Florida. And our lateral starts in Albany. If you guys know where we are in the state, we're about 62 miles to the Coffee County line from Albany, Dougherty County in southwest Georgia. So we're relying on one piece of pipe that comes all the way across that 60-plus mile space to feed our natural gas for our city, for our industry, for everything. That pipe was put in the ground many, many years ago in the 1950s or early 60s, and all the growth has taken up all that capacity over the 60 years, and now we need to expand that capacity, and that's what we're here to talk about. Again, Douglas Coffee County, we're actually at the end of that, so not only do we have limited infrastructure, we got the lowest pressure of everybody along that line, because if you remember from your basic chemistry class, the pressure is highest at that compression station at Albany, and the farther it goes along that pipe, the lower it gets. So we've got some issues there that we're trying to help with. And Douglas, in several of the cities in the rural part of the state, we're all spread out. So there's some hubs. And Douglas itself has become very much a hub of employment activity. We like to continue that progress. We've had a lot of growth over the years. But really, just to put it in context, and I said this to the council when we met in Americas last year, we had a pet food manufacturing plant that was an additional facility for the ecosystem for Pilgrims, poultry processing company that's been in Coffee County for a long time. In 2008, 2009, they actually shut down. It was the company that went through some hard times. They shut down a few facilities, including the one in Douglas. The unemployment rate in Coffee County got well into the double digits, approaching 20%, because not only were there's 1,000 jobs at the poultry processing facility that no longer was in operation, contract farmers who weren't directly employed by Pilgrims had no place to take their birds, and anybody that supported the farmers and also the industry itself and the processing plant itself no longer had the same level of work. It was pretty much for our county a depression. And since there's chicken farmers in 9 counties, including Coffee, that feed that plant, it was a really big deal in our state. Now, the success story of it is 2 years later, when Pilgrims was restructured and bought out by JBS, a Brazilian company, we were one of 2 plants that we got to bring back online. And that was a huge turnaround for our community, not just Coffee County, but obviously all those counties that surrounded that were impacted. To add further success to it, 2 years ago, Pilgrims announced they were going to invest $130 million into a pet food manufacturing facility that started up a little over a year ago. It was a $130 million investment, 75 new jobs, and it really just reinforced that they were here to stay. Now, that plant required pretty much all the excess capacity, what little was left, on that pipeline. If somebody else came right now and said, I'd like to invest $130 million, I'd like to create 75 jobs, and I need this much gas, I can't say yes to that. I'd have to say, no, I'm sorry. I really want all the things you're offering, but we can't accommodate you because of natural gas capacity. And to further drive in the problem, there's been a couple plants along that pipeline in some other counties that have closed down, which have freed up some gas capacity. So we were only able to provide the gas we could provide because places closed down in some other parts of our region. We want them to do well too, but we're in the unfortunate position that we need everybody else to do bad in order for us to do good, and that's not a good place to be. I want Fitzgerald to grow, I want Osceola to grow, I want Sylvester to grow, I want Tifton to grow, I want Ashburn to grow, and I want Douglas to grow. We shouldn't have to pick and choose, and this one issue is kind of putting us in that position. That's the seriousness of it. So talking about legislative progress we've had, thanks very much to you. The council made recommendations for 2 things that we were able to take care of in the legislative session earlier this year. One was something that had been discussed and even attempted before, allowing the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, GEFA, who already does loan and grant programs for water and wastewater infrastructure all over the state. It was a huge resource for cities and counties that provide those services. The legislation we asked for would also allow them to loan and grant money for natural gas infrastructure, which is equally, and in our case, sometimes more important than the water and sewer that obviously is essential. The other thing we asked of and got a recommendation in your report as a council was for the creation of the South Georgia Energy Authority. And since I announced myself as the chairman, obviously that has happened and we have met, and I want to give you some updates on some of those conversations. So here's a quick overview. I'm not going to read through everything on this. I will say both the bills that did get full passage and signed by the governor, initiated in the Senate. Our state senator Cardin Summers was the author of those, although there was always a companion bill in the House. I'm sure there's a great joke I could throw in here about how the House takes care of business and the Senate can't take care of the House business, but I'll leave that aside, whatever. But both those bills were from Cardin Summers, but they did go through this committee, and I appreciate very much the support. So those are very well supported in both chambers, and the governor signed it. And we've gotten some great conversations with Executive Director Jifa Hunter Hill, who's been incredibly supportive, him and his staff, about working through this new process, because natural gas and doing things through a multi-jurisdictional authority, slightly different than doing things just with the city for just water. But they've been great to work with on that. And we have had a meeting that I'll go through again on with the South Georgia Energy Authority. So again, here's just the proposed legislation, and just to give you a description of the authority itself. The authority is, again, it's 5 cities. It's Tifton, Ashburn, Osceola, Fitzgerald, Douglas, the 5 cities involved. And it really is structured like a joint development authority that was already allowed for in state code. It's a little different because most joint development authorities involve a county. And these, because gas systems are supported by cities, not counties, or at least that's the way we run them in rural Georgia. This is 5 cities that came together to form essentially a joint development authority that's very similar in responsibilities and authorities from any other JDA. We created this board with 8 members on the board. Each of those 5 cities got to select, the mayor of the cities would select a representative or him or herself. And then the other 3 members are economic development professionals from among those 5 cities that those 5 members that were appointed by their cities then select in their first meeting. So I'm actually, as an economic development professional from Douglas Coffee County, was selected and then made chairman. Jason Dunn, who's actually in the room, who's the executive director of the Fitzgerald Ben Hill Development Authority, is also on that board. We actually had the city of Ashburn selected their development authority representative. So we actually have 4 economic development folks. That's Ashley Miller that got selected there. We actually, the mayor of Osceola is the only elected official on there. In Douglas, it's a city manager. In Tifton and in Fitzgerald, they selected their gas superintendent. So we have a really good diversity of perspectives as far as, kind of tackling things from all the angles. We want the technical side of things on the gas operations. We've got that. We've got the political, we've got the city management, and obviously the economic development perspective on that. That's a picture of our first meeting, which we did in the city of Osceola. So again, I was elected as the chair. Melvin Harper, the mayor of Osceola, was elected as the vice chair. And pretty much just set out to see what we could do collaboratively. There was a lot to figure out. The line itself, just to go into that, to remind everybody, the lateral that we're needing to upgrade on or needing to kind of affect in some way is owned by Southern Natural Gas. And they're based in Birmingham, Alabama. I've had some great conversations. Thanks very much to the support we've gotten from the gas authority. Some members of the gas authority are here in support of us today. I've got a crash course. Chris Cohen actually asked me before this meeting if I'm an expert in compressed natural gas. I said it'll take me a long time to become an expert, but I certainly know a lot more now than I did a year ago, because we're looking for solutions. And solutions are obviously expensive if you just go and do the easiest thing to do. But in collaborating with 5 cities, with a private organization that's actually based outside the state, and then working with the legislature on things, because you're dealing with municipal opportunities to get funding, whether through grants or loans. So just to give you just some of the research we've done, we've had conversations about how do we increase the pipeline, and just to throw out some numbers, because that's the thing I always get when I'm talking to folks. Well, what do you need? What would it cost? So the biggest picture is it's a 60+ mile lateral, and there's a couple of shoot offs that actually where it comes and splits off, and one goes straight to Douglas, the other one goes to Osceola and Fitzgerald. So there's about probably 70 miles worth of pipe. If we replaced all of that, we're going to expand this, and we're going to expand, and we're ready. So the city of Douglas actually put in, I don't know how many millions of dollars, again, 20 years ago, it'd be more than that now. They put in 10-inch pipes that picks up for the city of Douglas's infrastructure. So we have a 4-inch natural gas lateral that feeds into a 10-inch pipe because the city of Douglas was ready for expansion and now we're ready for that lateral that's supposed to be the stronger trunk line with the bigger capacity and the higher pressure and all that. Again, that's a 4-inch pipe feeding into a 10-inch pipe. I'll say that a couple more times just to make sure that it's in. That's the part we really need to affect. If we replaced all of that 6-inch and 4-inch pipe that's the private company owned that feeds into all of our cities, the estimates we've gotten are about $130 million. I'm glad the chairman of House Appropriations is here to hear that number today. That's not something we would expect to be able to do all at once. This is going to be a multi-year, multi-phase approach. But just to give you some other numbers, because in talking with Gas Authority, talking with Southern Natural Gas, and talking with some other private corporations that help supply on a temporary, permanent storage types of solutions, there's a possibility of doing a compression station at the midpoint of that line, somewhere around Tift County as it approaches Irwin County, roughly. That would be a $15 to $20 million solution, and that would, the pipe stays the same, but obviously if you're compressing more, you're fitting more molecules in the same amount of space. And that's exactly what that's supposed to do on some of those laterals anyway. As I said, the compression stations in Albany comes all the way over, and by the time it gets to Coffee County, the pressure is significantly less. If we can boost that pressure to the midpoint, that would help us get more molecules through the same pipe. That would help us to some extent. Just to give you some numbers, we deal in MCFs, 1,000 cubic feet, or decatherms, which is not exactly the same. I end up using decatherms for my time as a recovering politician. Mayor of Ocilla dealt with the gas system there. We have the ability to move 11,500 decatherms per day through that pipe in the summertime, and in the wintertime, we're allowed to move 12,500 decatherms per day. That's over the whole line. That's all the cities. And Sylvester, that's not a part of our energy authority, but is on that line and does consume some of the gas on that line. That's 6 cities that consume all of that. There's one, Jason Dunn, correct me if this is wrong. I think Southern Veneer takes 1,000 decatherms per day on the regular. You're over in this corner. So, okay. So that's one company that wants 1,000 every single day. So again, just to show you what we're talking about, that's a high burner. That's above average. And we've got companies in Douglas that want that or more. And anybody that's coming and we want them to locate in any of those counties, anybody that's going to be a high burn, again, we're having to tell them no, because that's the kind of demand that's just kind of hoped for, expected if you've got somebody that just has that as part of their process. They need the heat. Southern Veneer is a timber company. Southern Veneer processes wood products. And they asked Fitzgerald not long ago about the possibility of expanding. Gas was the limiting factor. Now, that's long ago, what we're dealing with now, but just can't help but point that out. We've got solutions to some of our now current issues, and the infrastructure is a big key part of that. The compression station, going back to that, the compression station might increase our capacity another 2,000 decatherms per day to be able to move through that pipe to get to Douglas is the biggest burner, Fitzgerald's the second, Tifton's the third of the 6 cities on that line right now. So that's the kind of cost we're talking about. I'm currently looking at a storage solution, which means the cities would essentially have a big compressed natural gas tank. It would be on the city side of the meter, and the skin of the game for the cities would be they'd have to buy this in advance, because our biggest problem is not July or August. There's not a heavy burn on those days because people aren't using it for heat. The biggest time is when we have extreme cold temperatures in January. And you get, sub-freezing temperatures, and those industries still want to burn, but so does everybody else to keep things warm. And so we go over that limit and end up, in some cases, paying fees or having to tell industry, you have to shut down for the day. Not sure what you're going to do with your employees, but you can't burn past this limit or at all because the demand on the whole thing is just too much. We get a compression station or a storage solution that gives us an extra 2,500 or 3,000 decatherms that we can then use on those extreme days. That would prevent us from having to do that. So a storage solution that could be the first, we're talking about a $5 or $6 million investment, potentially putting a storage at the Douglas location and the Fitzgerald location. Those 2 cities would buy in advance. They would have to maintain and operate those stations. But that would be a very immediate solution. And at that point, taking care of those extreme temperature days, we could bring some smaller customers add on to our line. The big customers would still be a problem. We still got to look at a compression station or increasing the size and capacity of the pipe along the way, at least at some of those points. We're still looking at further solutions, but again, just wanted to give an update on that and start throwing out numbers, I suppose. So, Madam Chair, I'll stop. That's the end of the presentation, but I'd be glad to entertain any questions or hear any comments.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Matt? Seeing any, well, we certainly do want manufacturers, any other business to consider locating in rural Georgia, and you've done a really good job here of explaining to us why access to natural gas plays such a huge part in them looking at us favorably in rural Georgia. So thank you very much for that and all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to a presentation by Representative Ford and Mr. Hernandez. Is that right? Is that correct? Yes, Mr. Hernandez. But
Rodriguez.
Rodriguez. Okay,
Daniel
sorry.
Rodriguez.
But I'm gonna recognize Chairman Green quickly because he's gonna update on us on a piece of legislation that we looked at in our last meeting during session last year. It was a hearing only, but he has some updates he wants to give us on that. Chairman Green.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a quick update on House Bill 659 that was introduced last year. And we have it in committee, and we have been working on this particular part to bring optometrists to rural Georgia and Georgia in particular. We have two schools that we send our optometrists to. One is in Memphis, Tennessee. The other is in Birmingham, Alabama. And we feel like Georgia needs its own optometry school. So we are moving in that particular direction. And hopefully this year we will be able to look at some spots to actually have some optometrists going to a school that we hope to create here in the state of Georgia. There's been some movement in that area. So very early, I will ask the committee to look at House Bill 659, adding optometrists to a need for the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look forward to that meeting. All right, Representative Ford.
Thank you, Chair Lady Hagan, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present this today. This is a significant industry in our state that I was not aware of, and I don't think a lot of us are aware of, that affects rural Georgia. And I also like to thank Daniel Rodriguez for coming, Jason Dunn with Fitzgerald Ben Hill for coming, and Matt Seals also represents Douglas, which this industry is really significant to Douglas. And also like to recognize Charlie Fiveash, who is our director of the Rural Center in South Georgia that is located in my district in Tifton. So just going to get started here. The Georgia trailer industry, these are the trailers we're talking about. We're talking about utility trailers, cargo trailers, and like the utility dump trailers. And it is significant because it's over $1 billion in revenue to the state, provides over 50,000 jobs, and there's around 100,000 trailers produced annually. There's over that. So the reason I don't have more specific numbers is because it's not really tracked specifically. The VIN numbers associated with these trailers are also for semi-trailers and the pull-behind camping trailers. So it's really hard. I couldn't find the exact numbers to track. Most of them are in rural Georgia. Douglas, Fitzgerald, Douglas and Angie Osteen's district, Fitzgerald and Lisa Hagan's district, Nashville, my district, Nadale, Moultrie and Cordell area. And they're in other areas too in North Georgia as well, but they're really concentrated in South Georgia. Now I really want to turn it over to Daniel Rodriguez and let him tell you a little bit about his story and what's going on right now with this industry. Daniel works and owns Nation Craft, which he started in 2019. He employs 87 people now from 4 counties, and he's a great community partner, and he has a great story. So Daniel, please come up and just share with us.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Rodriguez.
Northern Nation Craft Trailers. We've been in the industry about 5 years. We employed, like she said, roughly about 87 people. We're one of the bigger premier companies in the area. We just have a lot of issues that we probably need to be, the state needs to be concerned about. A lot of it's revenue loss by not tracking these numbers and tracking all the companies that are established. We have a lot of loss of revenue for the state that I'm pretty sure you guys aren't aware of because from what I understand, the last time that I think Hal was here, he had a lot of questions that were thrown at him and he didn't, nobody really knew any kind of numbers on it. So some of the issues you can see is taxes not being paid. Workman's comp is a big deal, right? In rural Georgia, obviously, we have a lot of immigration help. That's one of the things that really affects the industry. Not being on payroll is a big deal, especially whenever payroll dictates how much workman's comp's paid, how much taxes are being produced by matching payroll taxes. And there's a lot of loss in that specific area. Not just that, but there's a lot of safety issues concerning how these things are built. I mean, they're on the road every day. So, at any given day, you might be behind 1 or 2 or 3. So there's no really industry standard on how they should be built. And I feel that that's an issue because the end user doesn't know what they're buying. So, I mean, when you're shopping, most of us go and shop for probably the cheapest thing on the market, right? But with the idea that it works. When these people, when the majority of the end user are buying, they're just buying price with the idea that their product's going to work. Unknowingly, they're buying subpar, trailers made with subpar material. So that's definitely a big issue. I feel for the safety concern of all, everyone on the road. Yeah, so one of the issues is it affects our sales in general. Like she said, it is a $1 billion industry. I mean, I know personally between like 5 or 6 of us, I know we produce well over 300 million in revenue just between 5 or 6 of us. And there's about 70 something companies around the state. So just having to do everything by the book, pay insurance, limited liability, product insurance, all these things makes it hard to compete with the people that are not being regulated or they're not under the microscope like we are. I started 5 years ago, a little bitty rink-a-dink building in Douglas, Georgia. 3 years ago, I managed to buy one of the biggest facilities in the industry. It's 187,000 square feet under roof and it's 50 acres. We have the capability of growing exponentially, but our sales are affected by all the people that do not follow the regulations. And all we want is someone to really come in and oversee it. We're not trying to create new laws or any of that, right? But it's very hard to compete in an industry where we're barred by our own laws, right? If anybody else, all the smaller guys or even some of the bigger guys that don't follow the book like we do, have the ability to be able to cut prices and all this stuff, which puts us at a disadvantage. So at a certain point, I mean, it's not, rocket science. Some of these guys are going to start to take over the industry. And if nobody is around to oversee the money that is being lost and the safety issues that are coming out of all this, then it'll affect the industry and us premier manufacturers might not be here very long.
Mr. Rodriguez, do you know offhand, and I apologize if you already mentioned this, do you know offhand how much you pay and for workers' comp?
Oh, I can give you,
insurance?
yep.
You know that number?
Just last year, I think we paid, it was 890,000 in payroll matching taxes, right? That's just me. And I'm not the biggest in the industry by no means. Our workman's comp's anywhere from about 7% to 12%. So, I mean, with 70 manufacturers, that's a lot of revenue. And I'm going to say that, I mean, there's probably a good 30, 40% that don't follow, you know, the laws in place. And I know there's been a lot of pushback on all this and, you know, people come to talk about this, but it is an issue that needs to be solved. I mean, we donate to 4 different counties around us. I mean, we're very, very in tune with all of the schools and, you know, and all of the local clubs. And on top of the expense that we've got, you know, these other guys that don't play by the rules, they don't necessarily want to be known, right? Because of then now they could be scrutinized, you know, along. So it is a lot of money, you know, that the state's not receiving.
We got some more information on the slides. If we can continue and we can ask questions at the end, we do that. Let me go through these. We'll stand up here with me. So we're talking about taxes, ad valorem taxes. So many times the ad valorem taxes are not being paid on these trailers. They are producing them and maybe holding them in inventory, but they're not assigning VIN numbers to the trailers oftentimes. So maybe somebody is selling a 23 model as a 25 model, and they're not paying ad valorem taxes for several years. Also 1099, they're being paid 1099s or either under the table. Employees are paid straight pay with no employee taxes deducted. So if you have a $50,000 a year employee, the employee, and we were very conservative on these figures. It was probably more than this, but federal and state taxes, there'd be 10,000 and from the employee that the state and federal government's missing out on, and nearly 4,000 from the employer part. So that's 1.4 million for somebody with like 100 employees. And that's not an abnormal number, really. They have a lot of employees. Also, we talked about workers' comp. Reputable employers, as he said, can pay 7 to 12% of their payroll. So somebody with 100 employees paying $5 million would be paying $350,000 to $600,000 in workers' comp premiums. And then what happens when somebody's hurt? Our rural hospitals have to foot the bill. Safety, again, there's no oversight. Poor craftsmanship. We've heard of a family of 4 in an accident with a trailer in front of them exploding and causing the deaths of the entire family. And again, this is not being tracked. The accidents are not being tracked with the trailers. They're being tracked with the vehicle pulling the trailer. So it's hard to get the information and accurate information on this. Workplace safety. There was a place down near, pretty close to me. There was an accident in a powder coating room, that an explosion there, injuring two people. And again, no blame or responsibility was placed on the employer, and the rural hospital had to foot the bill. There's also an incident that I've been aware of, the dealers who don't follow the rules. So they don't have a legitimate storefront. Hundreds are selling online with no business location. The brick and mortar building required for the business license is non-existent and not being enforced. They're evading taxes, liability insurance, product insurance, and with no business overhead or bills, causing an unfair advantage over someone playing by the rules. The potential solutions: we could enforce the current laws that we have on the books with the Department of Labor or through the Department of Revenue. We have this bill that I brought in last year. It's House Bill 590, and I have a summary sheet. I don't know if Cameron's in here to give everybody a copy of it. But it gives a lot of, just gives more oversight, and this is the first reader of it, that we do have a summary page. I know nobody wants more bills, more regulating boards. And we don't have to have a licensing board. If I'm kind of coming here, and we're coming here asking for everyone's help, the help of this committee. What can we do to help this industry? Because we don't need to lose another industry in rural Georgia. Angie, you know that. If we lose more industry, where does the tax burden come back to? It comes back to the landowners. And so we really want to do what we can to help this industry. I'm asking for y'all's help in this, that we can do this together and get behind this together to save them. Please.
Okay, you ready for some questions?
Yep, we're ready for some questions.
Okay. Representative Williams is online and Leo's gonna make this happen. He has a question for you. Hi, Representative Williams, can you hear
Hi.
us?
Am I
You have a
good?
question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? Well, I'm unmuted.
We can't hear you yet.
I don't think we may not be able to hear him.
I don't. Hello, testing. I'm unmuted.
Start over, Rep. Williams. We've got you
Okay.
now.
All right, fine. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. To Representative Osteen, thank you for bringing this. You know, this is not exactly an industry where a neighbor builds a go-kart for his son and one for his neighbor's son. This is major work being done with major taxes being lost. And I'm not familiar with House Bill 590, but I certainly will be looking at it. Something has to be done. There is not one thing that I heard that is not governed by current law is call enforcement. And we have to do that. That's just, there's no other way around it. And I'd like to see what 590 says, but thank you for coming forward.
Thank you. And I'm Representative Ford, Representative Williams.
Representative Ford, my problem, you know, at my age, you'll mix the names up every once in a while. Thanks for the correction.
It's okay. All right, Representative Osteen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So tell me this, where does OSHA currently fall with the trailer plants? Because that's typically who comes in and sets up safety standards in businesses. Where is OSHA with the trailer plants?
In all honesty, it's done on a as needed basis, from what I've understand. So like us being a bigger company, we're under the microscope a little bit more. So they tend to land once to twice a year. The conversations that I have had with the OSHA guys, that have come on our facility, I try to make it, very one-on-one so that I know what I need to do to keep up with regulations. But from my understanding with them is that they don't have the personnel to really enforce everyone in the industry, because there's so few of them in our area, is what I've been told. Because I think he comes out of Savannah. That's like 3.5 hours away from where I'm at.
So if OSHA currently oversees, that's federal too, right? That's every state, am I right?
Yes.
If OSHA is currently the entity that enforces those, what do you think that the legislature in Georgia could do in addition to that? Or, I'm trying to figure out what you're looking for.
So what I would really like to see is two things. I'd like to see OSHA come in and really check everyone, right? Whenever we get our manufacturing license, there is no prerequisite to being able to open up a company. So if Representative Ford would like to go open up one tomorrow with zero experience, she can. And that's one issue. The other issue would be to have either, I don't know, the Department of Revenue, whoever, Department of Labor, to check in to all these companies to make sure that they are, and enforce the law of matching payroll taxes and having workman's comp. All those issues are really the underlying issues of us or the state losing revenue.
May I continue, Chair? How many employees do you have?
Currently, I have 87. I've had up to 125.
Okay, I'm not sure how many employees it is that's required for you to have workman's comp.
Technically 3.
You're required to have 3.
Yes. I've had, individuals come in and like not take a job because we charge, taxes. And it's the law. I can't go about it. The SBA will pull my loan. I have my facility is financed through the SBA. If I don't show, at the end of every year, I have to show financials to the SBA. And if the SBA sees anything that they can scrutinize, they can pull my loan instantly and no more work.
Chairman Corbett, did you wave? Okay. Chairman Kaiser, who I'd like to thank for being an honorary member of this committee, and thank you for being here. Have you been to all three of our meetings in the interim? At least two. Yeah.
So you go back to the last 12 years of industry and labor meetings. We discuss this almost every year. The law was there and it was it all goes down to the federal lawsuit that came to a three-prong test of whether you are a W-2 or a 1099 employee. It's a very easy test and most people failed it on the very first one that's called control. It's an enforcement issue. There is a process where you can call Department of Labor and then there's an investigation. But the problem is so big, especially, you're one tiny industry that has this problem. In the construction world, it's magnified several hundred times that. It's an enforcement issue. And its latest estimates, it would bring the state in about $400 million in revenue if we would just enforce. And that real quick, I'll give the story of the story I told in committee. I was getting some lumber at my local hardware store and a holiday was coming up. And I said, "You getting off?" He said, "No, I'm working." I said, "So are you getting overtime?" He said, "No, I'm salaried." This was a guy who loads lumber. He fails the control test. He has no authority over any other employee. He would fail the other two tests. The employer was paying him as a 1099. He's working an incredible amount of overtime. So not only is he losing wages, he is not getting workers' comp. He had a huge bandage on his hand. I said, "Did you get that here?" He said, "No, that was my last employer, also a local employer." I said, "Did you get hurt at work?" He said, "Yes." I said, "So workers' comp covered that, right?" He said, "No, I was a salaried employee there as well. And my employer said that they would take care of it. They paid for the initial treatment. And then after that, all costs stopped." It may be one of the biggest, it's probably the biggest problem we have in the workplace, is what you're describing.
Yeah.
And it's the illegal use of 1099s or under the table, which is more prevalent or becoming more prevalent now because of undocumented, because you can't do a 1099 or W-2 on those. But even people who are here legally, the 1099 issue, I just gave you two examples of a very small hometown that I'm in. It's an enforcement issue. The laws are there.
I agree. We even went to the extent of saying that we could give a percentage of the trailers. I think last time that you guys were here, they said that we would be willing. We've got a committee that we have formed on our own association. And it's actually a legal, it's actually a legal representation, right? Yeah, so.
You have an association that y'all pay dues in,
Yeah.
that represent, a guy that represents you, a governmental affairs guy.
So we have gone to the extent of saying that we will come out of pocket, to be able to pay, because one of the rebuttals that we got, I think the last time that we were here, one of the guys was here, was that the state didn't have enough revenue or didn't produce enough revenue to be able to hire somebody to go out and do it. So what we said was we would be willing to come out of pocket per unit to be able to come up with enough revenue for you guys to be able to hire somebody so that they could come enforce us. So at this point, I don't think it's a problem of money. I think it's a problem of just.
If we had
adding.
enforcement, and this might be a budget issue that we need to.
I do not see any further questions or comments right now, but I want to tell you, thank you for being an employer and a business owner who wants to follow the law and do things right and do right by your employees. I appreciate you coming and sharing this information, and Representative Ford, I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Members, you are going to receive a letter in your email in a couple of days that with some more information. So if you just look out for that letter. It's regarding this issue. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page on this and want to make sure we're trying to address the situation in as timely a manner as we can. Thank you. And I think, there's an overview sheet that we're probably going to be also sending. So all this information is going to be coming to you.
That we will be probably sending around just a support letter to get maybe members of this committee to sign on to urge maybe Department of Labor and Department of Revenue to start enforcing the laws that we have on books.
That's right. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got one last presentation. That is going to be Mike Rutz and Ben Lido with Make My Move. We appreciate you coming and sharing this information with us. And while they do, since we are short on time, I'm going to go ahead and make a few announcements so that we have this taken care of. First of all, as we just said, be on the lookout in your house email account for the presentations and some other information from today. We also, for members of the committee, have lunch provided downstairs in room 216. That is being provided by GMA, and we certainly do appreciate them doing that. And also, would you see Cameron Sanchez at lunch with your mileage for today? Or if you're not going to lunch, would you email her your mileage so that she can get that worked up for us? All right. Thank you for being here to talk to us about this interesting program that you have in your business that
Thank you, Madam
could
Chair. and
potentially help rural communities.
Thank you for having us, and thanks to you and the members of the committee for giving us the time. We're very grateful to be here. And I also am fully aware we are the only ones keeping you from lunch, so we're gonna be as brief and to the point as we can. I want to give you guys a little bit of a background on us. My name's Mike Rutz. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Make My Move. This is Ben Lado. He's the vice president of Make My Move. We are a company located in Indianapolis. We are basically a company that helps states and communities set up programs and processes to relocate people to their states and their communities, grow population and grow workforce. We started in 2018, but the origin story is actually fairly relevant here. Ben and I met each other 20 years ago, working for a gentleman named Mitch Daniels. Mitch was the governor of the state of Indiana, and we worked on his political campaign. Ben was the driver of the RV, and I got to drive around the state with him while I was his fundraiser. After the campaign, there was a gentleman named Bill Osterly who was the co-founder of a company called Angie's List. Hopefully you all have heard of Angie's List. Bill was the campaign manager for Mitch. He had taken a leave of absence to run that company and to run the campaign. And so Bill actually recruited me to Angie's List. And there's actually some relevance here to the story there to what we're doing today. Did his penance in state government for 5 years. We spent 12 years at Angie's List growing that company, taking it public, turning it into a household brand name. Hopefully you all have heard of it. In 2017, Angie's List was sold. Bill had left the business. Ben and I were still there. And, we left the company shortly after it was sold. And Bill reached out to us and said, hey, I've been talking to Mitch, and one of the greatest threats we think to the sustainability and Mitch's legacy in Indiana as an economic development governor is population growth and workforce availability. And he said it's a big problem, and people weren't necessarily talking about it back then. Everybody's talking about it now, today. And every state is dealing with it in different ways. But we said, let's go out and try to solve it here in Indiana and see if we can't go out then and help other states do the same thing. So we started a company that was really oriented around taking all the marketing tactics and technologies and things that we learned at Angie's List. We spent about $90 million a year marketing there, and using that to create pools of talent that cities and states could draw from to relocate to their communities and states. that was going well, but then this pandemic popped up and suddenly that kind of changed the whole world. What was real interesting for us when the pandemic happened, we suddenly saw this this proliferation of remote workers, right? We went from 6 million to 50 million. There's right now there's around 25 million in the country. But even more interestingly, we saw communities that started to create programs and incentives to relocate people to their communities. So they were taking the traditional economic development play where you incentivize employers to open up operations and offices and create jobs for a population to fill. They were circumventing that and they were offering these programs and these incentives directly to people. And so we saw that and we thought, this is really interesting. There's a marketplace developing. There's a bunch of communities that are interested in growing their population and their workforce, and they're willing to do something about it and make an investment. And there's all these geographic free agents. There's 7 million people a year that move to a new state every year. And so we actually called the communities and started asking them, hey, talk to us about this. It was real apparent to us right away that this is economic development. If you go and you ask a mayor, hey, would you rather have a check for $2 million or would you rather have 30 new households with an average household income of $100,000? They'd take the households. I mean, the lifetime value of a new household to a community is extraordinary. And so we talked to the communities and then we just decided, hey, let's go out and see if we can't create this marketplace online. So we started MakeMyMove.com. We put there were 12 communities that were doing it. The first month we had over 150,000 people visit the website and engage and actually apply to these communities and their programs. So we thought, okay, we've really got something here. This is very interesting. So then after that, we decided, let's go see what it's like to make the donuts. We called communities and we started primarily in Indiana. There's a small regional economic development corporation down there. It's very rural in southwestern Indiana. Greensburg, Indiana, Muncie, Indiana, West Lafayette. West Lafayette has Purdue. It's a fairly large community, but the other ones are pretty small. All of them experiencing population decline, with the exception of West Lafayette. And here's where we really actually learned. This was the light bulb moment for us. Was we were talking to the mayor of Greensburg. He's a young guy, and he said, hey, we've had population decline for over 3 decades in Greensburg. We need to do something about it. I want to recruit families to Greensburg. And Greensburg is an 11,000 person community nestled right about halfway between Cincinnati and Indianapolis in eastern Indiana. So we sit down with him and we say, okay, we're learning too. Why would people want to move to Greensburg? Tell us about why someone would make the decision to take their family and move them into the city. We spent about 10 or 15 minutes talking about how Greensburg is 45 minutes from Cincinnati and 45 minutes from Indianapolis. I mean, that was their whole pitch. And it occurred to us right away, we're like, oh my gosh, they have been selling, this is the pitch you make to Honda or to Whirlpool. This is not the pitch you make to a family or a household. They want to know what life is like on Wednesday night. They want to know what kind of schools they have there and what kind of community organizations they have. They want to know who are their people going to be and what connections are they going to make and how are they going to do that. And so we came up. There was a woman there who ran the local community foundation. She was retired. She said, I have a network of old folks who are empty nesters and would love to babysit. And we want to attract families, and childcare is an issue pretty much everywhere. How about we do this? And we were like, that's marketing gold. We called it Grandparents on Demand, and it went viral. And we ended up generating 2,200 applicants to the Greensburg program in 2.5 weeks. We ended up relocating 6 of them. And the state of Indiana got very curious. By the way, 2,200 applicants to move to Little Greensburg, Indiana, 11,000 people. Just fascinating to me that it drew that much attention. The state of Indiana, the Secretary of Commerce called and said, hey, I'm really interested in hearing what you guys are doing. Talk to me about it. And so we told him, and he said, well, why'd you only move 6? And we said, well, we ran out of money. Greensburg effectively ran out of money. And so the state decided to go in and it made perfect sense for them. They decided to help subsidize these programs and to help scale it. So now in Indiana, we have 36 programs. In the last 2 years, we moved over 2,000 people. Average household income is about $125,000. Average household size is 2.3. So they're actually bringing spouses that 50% of the time are working for a local employer. The children are, helping to seed not just future population growth, but I tell you what, in some of these small communities, the high school is on the razor's edge of closing, so getting new students into those communities makes a huge difference. And so we grew that and scaled that, and now we're starting to, run around the country and talk to other states. We have about 350 programs on the site. The thing that I think is so ingenious about the way these programs are structured is what we're doing with the states is the states are typically creating grant programs because the communities have to be the ones that do this. The state can't do this. I've seen plenty of states sink millions of dollars into marketing campaigns. People don't move to states. They move to communities in those states, right? And so the communities have to be activated. One, they have to have a value proposition. Two, they have to have an audience, which is what, kind of comes built in with us. And three, they have to have a process to be able to move those people. So our work, one, activates the communities at the state level with the grants, the communities that are willing to do the work and provide the resources to it. They're the ones that actually get to go and participate in this. And the grants are paid out in chunks. So you only get, you get an initial tranche of money in order to start the program. And there's a certain number of movers, like a target number of movers associated with that grant. And you, once you hit a certain threshold of those movers, then you get your next tranche of money. Then you get your next tranche of money. And when you think about it from a state perspective, what's so interesting about this is, one, the state payback period is less than a year and a half. So the amount of money that the state puts in, you make that back in tax revenue in less than a year and a half. Two, it addresses a core need for a lot of rural communities. 76% of the movers in the state of Indiana that we've relocated moved to a community with declining or stagnant population. Three, it supplements traditional economic development. A lot of these small communities don't have any real economic development pipeline right now, but this is an economic development activity they can do and they can participate in. And it also leads to more attraction from companies because they see a community that's actually willing to do something about it. Let's see, what else am I thinking about? We're currently working in, economics. I'll talk about the economics of it real quick. I mentioned Angie's List. We understood the unit economics of every dollar that was invested to grow that business. We knew how much it cost to acquire a member. We knew how much revenue that member would generate over their lifetime, and we knew how long it took for us to get paid back for that cash investment that we were making up front to finance it. This is the same exact thing. If you look at the packet that we handed out on, I believe it's page 5, you can actually see in detail the economics of a household that gets relocated, what it costs, what the return on investment is for the locals in the state, and what the payback period is for that. So the lifetime value of these households is extraordinary. It doesn't take a whole lot of time to get paid back. Plus, you're getting the bank shot of future population growth because they're bringing kids and they're helping to create jobs in the community. We actually worked with an economist from Indiana University Public Policy Institute to create this model. And then we use a company called Implan, which is kind of the gold standard for measuring economic impact to drive these numbers in these models. So what we were proposing is that in Georgia, we work with 2 communities today, Columbus and Macon. We have some results in here with them, and there's a couple of letters of support from them to talk about how well the programs are going. Columbus started in 2024, and Macon just started in, I believe, July or August this year. So Macon is still pretty new. But what we're proposing is that the state of Georgia creates an appropriation, effectively a fund for grants to be administered to the communities that want to do this. That way, the communities that are, are ready to run and resource this and make this successful are the ones that get to participate. It'll take too much more time. So any questions? Yeah, I want to make sure you guys.
Well, I'm wondering, am I remembering correctly that Columbus, the city of Columbus, maybe their Chamber of Commerce several years ago had a program that they had implemented themselves where they
did, and it didn't work very well.
it didn't work for them
So
to do it that way.
they came
So
to
they
us.
contacted you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the advantages that we have that's built in is it's almost turnkey, right? I mean, you were looking at our website as you came in. We have over 1.5 million visitors every year come to our website. That audience is already targeted and qualified. These are people who are literally looking for a new place to live, right? And so by having that built-in audience, it takes the cost of marketing down. For a community to go out and create their own marketing campaign, to number one, understand what their value proposition and what their message is. Two, identify their audience. Three, go out and communicate and spend the money to actually market to that audience. It's very expensive. So we short circuit that because we are the marketplace where all of these folks that are looking for a new place to live come. And so we can direct them to the communities where they want to go. And I will tell you, Georgia is, Georgia's a great place. You guys you are growing, obviously, but there's a lot of counties and communities in the state that aren't. But they can take advantage of being, where you are geographically in the state that you're in, and I think drive a lot of interest in a lot of new residents.
You do have a question?
Yeah, please.
Representative Ford.
So are you doing this by like job-based too? So if a community had something, then they said that we need a music teacher in this community, or we need different, because that's a lot of those problems
That's right.
that
We
face.
we
So
have
is that kind of connected?
healthcare is one that's really in a lot of rural communities. We have some rural use cases in here. We work in Appalachian, Kentucky, in Northwest Kansas, and a variety of others. Sometimes they might want teachers, sometimes they want healthcare workers, maybe it's police or firefighters. Sometimes there might be an economic development project that's coming in where they might need some manufacturing workers, things like that. You can kind of build it to target whatever type of worker you need. And a lot of times if you can, like with healthcare, a lot of times you'll build a capital stack where it's the state, the community, and maybe the hospitals that are all contributing to the program and helping to pay for it. Does that make sense?
Thank you. This is very interesting, and I appreciate you reaching out and bringing this to us today. Did any committee members have a question or comment? Is your contact information in the packet?
If it's not, we will.
You
we'll
send that
get
to
it
us.
to
We'll
you.
get that out through email as well
Yeah.
for the members. All right. All right, Representative Stinson has a question.
Thank you for your presentation. And you mentioned Columbus and Macon. My district is not far from Macon. What was the involvement with the local governments with this particular event, or were there any involvement with local governments?
Yeah, in Columbus, it was primarily with the chamber. They did, as mentioned, they had an organization, and then in Macon, it was again, the chamber there. There was conversations, of course, with, local leadership, but primarily the contract with us and the direct, relationship is with those chambers. Yeah, we've had conversations with about 37 communities across Georgia. And the comments are very interesting. We'd love to have this. It often comes down to really resources and funding primarily, and the ability to be able to fund the program in a sustainable way.
And again, we see this as another form of economic development. I mean, it may not sound a lot, like say you move 20 households into a community of 5,000 people, right? But that's the equivalent of basically like a new 20-person company moving in with an average, and you can see the average income and how high it is in Georgia so far. It's $168,000. So, and the fact that they're bringing kids and spouses, it just, it's really impactful on a lot of these small communities.
All right, I think that's it for the committee.
Thank you so much. We
We
appreciate the
appreciate you.
time
Yes, sir.
and we'll be sure to get that information to you.
Great. Well, that is the last item on our agenda for today. I appreciate you all being here. So much could be said by, I'm sure, all of us about how important bringing jobs, growth, development to our rural communities is, and I know everybody on this committee is deeply committed to that. So I want to say to each one of you that are here and the ones that couldn't be here today or couldn't stay today, thank you for being so engaged in the interim with this committee work. And I look forward to working with y'all on some good things during session. Again, look out for that email that's going to have all the information in it, and we'll see you downstairs for lunch in room 216. Yes, thank you. Meeting adjourned.